We both hope you all had a wonderful holidays. Spent a lot of time with your families. Um, but let's get right to it. Playoff football, it is right here. Obviously, right now, a big topic is obviously what's going on tomorrow night. We got the TCU Horned Frogs playing up against the Georgia Bulldogs after Georgia came back from being down double digits against Ohio State to clinch their spot. It's going to be a very interesting matchup because I think Ohio State, they moved the ball on that Georgia defense. All I've been hearing is that Georgia defense is very stifling. I did not see that. Maybe a little bit toward the end of the game, but that Georgia defense can be beat. TCU's offense is very, very dangerous with Max Duggan. Obviously, they've got a few other offensive weapons as well. What are your thoughts on this national championship? I think we're going to get a really good matchup between these two squads.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you alluded to, I think that this team is, this TCU team, like you alluded to, they're definitely a threat. They did not beat, they did not beat who they beat without being a threat. They would not have beaten Michigan if they're not a threat. So I think that this TCU team is the real deal. And I think that within that, they will show that against Georgia because Georgia's great. I mean, Georgia's 14-0. They're number one. They are absolutely, in this moment, they are looked at as the best team. But I think TCU is only one game behind them. They're 13-1, and they showed up and showed out against Michigan. And I think everybody, including me, I thought Michigan was going to be the national champion. I said this was their year. Last episode, I said this is Michigan's year, and I stuck to that. But now we obviously know that's not the case. So I think that, to be honest with you, this TCU team, to have that grit to go against Georgia and win, or excuse me, to go against Michigan and win, I think they have that grit against Georgia. And if we're talking predictions, I think TCU wins 35-28 in a really hard fought game. Obviously 35-28, that's a pretty middle of the road scoring game. It's not a low scoring game. It's not an extremely high scoring game, but it's like middle of the pack. I think we're going to see both sides of the football on both teams be really, really active that night. So I think we're going to see one of the better college football championships we've seen. I've got TCU on top, and maybe I'm crazy, but the fact that they took Georgia, that they took, again, I'm doing it again. I guess I'm just trying to predict the future over here. The fact that they took Michigan down like they did, it's not like they blew them out and Michigan had a bad game, or it's not like, they were the way better team and the team that was favored to win. It was a hard fought game. Michigan and TCU went back and forth the entire game until the last second. So I think that's how this game is going to be. But I've got TCU on top 35-28 because I think this TCU team has the grit, and that quarterback is absolutely 150% special. He may not have won the Heisman, but I'm sorry. I think he should have won it. So I think he's the truth, and I think this team is the real deal. So I've got TCU winning it, and call it an upset. I would call it an upset because I didn't even think TCU would be in the playoffs. So I think TCU is kind of having a Cinderella type of year, and I'm really happy for them. They've got a really great, solid team, and I think that Georgia's great, but I just think this TCU team has it in them. What do you think when we talk predictions? What do you think?
I'm also going with TCU on this one. TCU is very dangerous, as we saw up against Michigan. Michigan could not stop TCU's offense whatsoever. Obviously, TCU's defense also made a couple of plays too by getting a couple of touchdowns. So I like what you said about them having the grit. I think this team has the grit, and this all goes to the head coach too. Sonny Dykes is in his first season with TCU, and he's already led them to the playoff. And the recruiting class that they had the year prior was in the 40s or the 50s. So they don't have all the top dogs like Alabama, the Georgia, the Michigans, the Ohio States. And they're still doing this. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, as far as predictions go, I'm going to go with TCU in a little bit more of a high scoring game. 52-45. I think TCU gets the ball late, and I think they drive to win it in the final minute. It's kind of remarkable. I don't think anybody thought that TCU was going to be in this position. And this just has the story of a Cinderella type year. And it just goes to show, you don't have to have the top talent. You just got to have good coaching. And if you have good coaching, you can coach up your players that you've got and you can beat anybody in the country. This is the prime example of that. And I think TCU is going to take care of business tomorrow. 52-45. I think Max Duggan is going to have a Heisman type game. He's going to put this team on his back. I think the outside linebackers of TCU is going to give Georgia's front line some fits. And I think they're going to make some plays. They may even force a couple of turnovers. But I think it's going to be one of the best ones we've seen in a while for sure, man.
I mean, without a doubt, how can it not be? This TCU team taking down Michigan. I got it right this time. I didn't say Georgia. Again, I'm trying to tell the future. I'm trying to predict out here because I really think, like we both alluded to, this is one of the only predictions we've agreed on. And it's not that we sit here arguing, but it's just a lot of the times we kind of go both ways with games like this. But in this case, we can go the same way because I think there's no way that TCU is not ready for a challenge like this. This is a game that they are ready for. And the fact that they beat Michigan, the team that I thought was going to win it all, the team that I claimed last episode that this was their year, they beat that team. So I think TCU is that team, and I think we're going to see that. But speaking of Michigan, Jim Harbaugh has been there for a pretty solid amount of time since 2015, and he has really been a staple in that program, bringing them to where they are now. They were absolutely not a national championship caliber team when he got there, and they are a team that is in that caliber where they're at now. Now, there is a rumor that he, and we'll get more in this later when we talk about NFL news more, but there's a rumor that he is getting interviewed for the Broncos open slot for head coach. And the question that is asked, and that I would like to ask you is, do you think this Michigan football team is going to make it back to the playoffs, and more importantly, make it back to the semis next year? Or do you think, do you think they're going to make it through the semis? Do you think they're going to make it to the semis? Or do you think they're out? What are your thoughts on this Michigan team if Harbaugh leaves? Or do you even think Harbaugh is going to leave? Do you think this is all smoke? What are your thoughts on this? Because this is a big deal. You go from losing a game in the semis to potentially interviewing for an NFL job. That is that's big news for NFL timeline, college timeline. What are your thoughts on this, man?
Yeah, so I'm going to go off of your first point here. If Jim Harbaugh leaves, Michigan is not going to be anywhere near where they are right now. I'm just going to lay that out there. They're going to need to get another proven head coach to go in there and try and, come up with the same plan that Jim Harbaugh's had. And there's not a whole lot of those open right now. Plus, they would probably lose a lot of players to the transfer portal. It would set Michigan back. I'm not going to say that it's going to be a big drop off, but if Jim Harbaugh leaves, they're going to go from a team that wins 10 to, 12, 13 games a year to maybe a team that wins 7, 8. So they're not going to be in that conversation, in my honest opinion, for the semis. Your second point, though, do I think he's going to leave? I honestly don't think so, because Jim Harbaugh has stated Michigan was his dream job. He's got his dream job, and he's led Michigan to back-to-back Big Ten titles and back-to-back semifinal appearances in the college football playoff. He's got Michigan in a really good spot. He just got to keep recruiting, and eventually he'll get that team over the hump, because right now he's got them as a perennial national championship contender. They're consistently in the conversation for the playoff. Obviously, they've made it the last 2 years. I honestly think everything that we're hearing is all smoke. And Jim Harbaugh actually came out and said this last week that is like, yeah, you guys are hearing all the noise about, potential NFL jobs, but he's like, my plan is to stay with Michigan, which in my opinion kind of solidifies things as he is going to be the Michigan head coach in 2023. Um, I don't foresee him leaving. If he leaves, it's gonna kind of be a shock to the system, especially after coming up with a statement like that. What are your thoughts on everything? I'm kind of curious what you have to, what your thoughts are. Um, do you think he's gonna truly leave, or do you think he's gonna stay in a spot where he knows that he's gonna be in the conversation for the playoff every single year?
Yeah, so my biggest thing is before Harbaugh was at Michigan, it was a mess. And a lot of people alluded to the fact that they thought the head coaching position was the reason that Michigan was a mess. Brady Hoke was the coach. He didn't have a lot of success. His first season there, he actually had a really successful 11-win season. But his last season there, I think he only won like 5 games, and then they moved on because they thought that was for the best. Were they incorrect on that? I really don't think so. But the biggest problem was there were bigger problems going on in Michigan. Michigan, while it's iconic, has also had a lot of problems behind the scenes that sometimes it's came out, sometimes it's not. And that was a moment where that athletic department was having a lot of problems internally. So I think that Michigan was in a bad spot, not because of Brady Hoke. He's a fine coach. Is he a super, super talented coach? Would he survive in the Big Ten today? Absolutely not. He couldn't survive in it 5 years ago. He would get eaten up and spit out today.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I don't think he's the reason that team wasn't successful. The fact that Harbaugh came in right after and, won 10 games right after only winning 5. Yeah, that looks great for Harbaugh. That shows how great of a coach he is. But what I'm going to say right now is if Harbaugh does leave, and we'll get into this again in the NFL segment, but if Harbaugh does leave, can Michigan still be great? Absolutely. Absolutely. They went from 12-2 in 2021 to 13-1 in 2022. They are only getting better. Might I add you before that COVID season, they were 2-4. Of course, we don't count that. I don't really count that. But even before that season, they were 9-4. So they've only gotten better. They've only progressed. And yes, that is Harbaugh, but that's not just Harbaugh. That's the team. That's the culture. So can Michigan be successful without Harbaugh? Absolutely, but it's going to take the right coach. And we're seeing that in other sports, other teams where legendary coaches leave, such as Duke for basketball. Yeah, they're still top 25. They're still one of those teams, but they're not that top 5 team they were with Coach K. So you do lose that certain level of intensity and that certain level of greatness if you lose that coach, but you can still be in the mix. So I think Michigan will be in the mix regardless of Harbaugh. Do I think Harbaugh is going to leave or not? I don't know. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but I definitely think it's a possibility. But again, like you alluded to, there's a lot of smoke that goes on with these coaching decisions. There's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of, murky waters. So who really knows? But can Michigan still be great? Absolutely. Will they be great 100%? Definitely not. That's not how that works. But moving on, we have some more college football to talk. We have some pretty exciting Husker football news to talk about. It feels great to finally say that. I've not been able to say that for a couple of years. But I think that this team is finally looking great. So take it away, man. Walk us through it. We got some big recruiting, situations, some transfer. We got a lot of stuff to talk about with Husker football. Let's get right into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's just all start. The new coaching staff with Matt Rule has done an amazing job coming in and coming up with a top 25 recruiting class in a short amount of time. They picked up a few really good recruits. Most notably, they were able to retain Malachi Coleman out of Lincoln East. He, according to 24/7, he is the number 84 recruit, number 1 in the state, high-end 4-star, borderline 5-star recruit. Wonderful job at retaining him. They ended up picking up a big-time edge rusher out of Texas, Prince Will Umanmielen. I probably butchered his last name. They were able to get Cameron Lenhart from IMG Academy to recommit. He was previously committed when Mickey Joseph was head coach in the interim role, but he decommitted after all the stuff with Mickey Joseph came out. Riley Van Poppel. They picked up a very rangy corner in Ethan Nation out of Georgia, high-end 4-star or high-end 3-star prospect. Jaden Doss. I can go on and on. They have 30 newcomers coming into this program this next year, and there's still going to be more. They're eyeing several more offensive linemen in the transfer portal. And the new offensive coordinator, Satterfield, has come out and stated, and all the Husker fans are going to get so excited about this. The fullback is back, guys. The fullback is back. We have been told that the fullback is coming back and they're going to be utilizing it. They're going to utilize more heavy sets to run the ball. So they're going to put more emphasis on winning the line of scrimmage, and they're going to be throwing the ball off of the run. They're going to be running an RPO type offense, which if Casey Thompson ends up being the starter this next year, I think he's going to fit really well in the system because that's exactly what he ran in high school in Oklahoma City. Man, I am honestly very happy with what the recruiting class is. And then going to 2024, as we all saw, the number one overall recruit in 2024 decommitted from Ohio State. He is none other than Dylan Raiola. Excuse me. Dylan Raiola is the number one player. He is a quarterback, high-end 5-star recruit. He decommitted from Ohio State, and right now he has numerous crystal balls of committing to Nebraska. If Nebraska can find a way and win this year and Dylan ends up committing, watch out because the recruiting floodgates are going to open in 2024. I mean, the sky is the absolute limit. If we can pick up one, we're going to pick up multiple. Man, I was excited when Frost first got hired, but I don't know if I've been truly this excited for the beginning of another coaching tenure than I have been with Matt Rule so far and his staff. What a wonderful job, man. Take it away. I want to hear your thoughts on everything because they have done a very, very good job in such a short amount of time.
Absolutely, man. And if any of our fans that are here, because I know we have some returners, I've gotten some messages on social media from people that are glad we are back because we took a little break. But if you know and love our show from when we started, you know that I was not sold last year. I believe you were on the team this year for this season. And for reason, we had the talent, we didn't have the coaching. You have to have both. We know that, it is what it is. But I have never been this optimistic since we had Bo Pelini. And even when we had Bo Pelini, I wasn't extremely optimistic because I knew there was a lot of disconnect there that was not going to work. I have not been this optimistic potentially since I have actually become a knowing, willing Husker fan. Because when you're in Nebraska, you have no choice. You're a Husker fan when you're born. You have no choice. Yeah. Everyone's a Husker fan in Nebraska. You can maybe make your decision later on, but you better not be liking a team like Texas because that's just not going to roll in Nebraska. Absolutely not. So what I will say is when I became a knowing, willing Husker fan, I never really was super optimistic because there was always this, we're not who we were, we're not who we should be energy, even with Bo Pelini, who was one of the more successful coaches we've had within the last 20 years. Yep. But what I will say is I am extremely optimistic. Of course, for the recruits, but we've had recruits. We had recruits with Riley. We had recruits with Frost. We have recruits with Rule, but we also have a coaching staff that I think will back up the recruits. So is the recruitment great? 100%. I'm super excited with the recruits we have. I think that this is going to be a turnaround season, regardless of if that means we win 10 games or we win 6 games. 6 games would be a turnaround season, in my opinion. Do I think we're only going to win 6 games? Definitely not. I am setting our floor at this moment at 7. But if we only win 6 games, that will still be an improvement. I am looking for improvements, and I think that it matches up. I think we have a great coaching staff, and I think we have the recruits and the returning players to coincide and make that an environment that will win. So I'm super excited. I think Rule was the perfect hire. He is the type of hire we should have gotten when we got Frost. Would we have gotten Rule then? No, but we should have gotten a coach such as Rule, either a coach that has NFL experience and a solid amount of pretty decent college experience, or just college. We should not have gone for Frost. I get why we did. You get why we did. Everybody gets why we did. But this is the right step forward. I think that this Husker team took an abrupt step forward. Do I think that firing Scott Frost was the best decision when they did it? I'm going to be honest, I don't know. I don't think it was the worst decision. It wouldn't have changed the outcome of the season when we did it. But I think that it was an abrupt decision that needed to happen, and now we are moving forward in the right direction. So I'm optimistic is the only way I can describe it. It's not the way I felt. And these recruits, especially that homegrown talent, when you get
Yes.
state, we have lost so many top tier recruits to other Big Ten teams as well. I might add to you, we have lost so many players. Have we gotten Nebraska talent on Nebraska teams in the last decade? Yes, but we have
not to this extent.
Oh, not even close. This is the most Nebraska talent we have had in a decade.
I've even seen in some places, because Nebraska has signed 8 scholarship players from the state of Nebraska. It is the most in-state scholarship players that they've picked up in a recruiting class since 1998. 1998. No, the last 4 coaching staffs that we've had have not replicated that until Matt Rule has got here. They know the importance of locking down in-state talent because, like you said, other teams are coming in here because they realize Omaha is a pretty decent talent bed for players. And Matt Rule sees that. So now he is like, okay, we're going to be the first to offer these guys and we're going to recruit these guys hard. And it showed. And they pull in 8. 8 out of the 30 players that they're bringing in are Nebraska in-state talent. It is crazy. We finally have a coaching staff that cares about in-state talent, that wants that in-state talent to stay here and make Nebraska great again.
And that's what it takes. The Nebraska teams that won championships were built up with a lot of great Nebraska talent. People forget a lot of the best Husker teams were built with Nebraska talent. And a lot of the best college football teams are built with in-state homegrown talent. People don't look at that because you look at all the flashy recruits, the 5 stars from this state, from that state, but that in-state talent is absolutely underrated. And the Huskers have had great luck with that. So even in their not so great years, they've had luck with in-state talent. So the fact that I think we are kind of on the surge of a new era, the fact that we're on that surge and we have this in-state talent that outweighs the in-state talent I think we've ever had. I think this is the best offseason the Huskers have had. And it's not even the end of it yet. I mean, we're still looking at different things that could happen, we haven't even seen what our boys really look like yet. And it looks better than it has. So how can this not be a new era and a new dawn? And it doesn't matter if we win 10 games or 6 games, it's going to be better than what we've seen.
Yeah.
I think we can almost guarantee that, bro. I think we haven't been able to do that, but I think with Rule, we can almost 100% guarantee. Is it going to be a 10-win season? Is it going to be playoffs, Big Ten? No, maybe not Big Ten championship, but it's going to be better. That's all we want. That's all we want is better.
Absolutely. But like a part of me, I'm getting like a special feeling about what this staff is going to do because this staff is young, it's energetic, and it's hungry. And you see it all over Twitter. The Nebraska football players that have decided to stay, they are hungry. they are really hungry to get this thing right. And we finally got the leadership in place to do that. And I kind of agree. I think you can set Nebraska's floor pretty high. Mine is at 7 right now, but I think if Rule gets these guys into what he sees them being early on, because he has come out and said that they want to win right away, I don't think we're going to see the type of teardown that Baylor had or Temple. I think Nebraska is going to be pretty good to compete almost right away. Dude, the sky is the limit. Nebraska has all the resources in the world to pull in really good talent right now. And if they give any of these, talented prospects a reason of hope this next year, watch out, because the sleeping blue bud might be waking up here pretty soon. And I can't be more excited about saying that. Like, I've seen Nebraska so bad the last 6 years, really the last 2 decades. They've been
It's
so
terrible.
mediocre.
It's
And
been this isn't a team that just won all these championships in the 90s. It went from that to just nothing.
yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, they've made it to obviously the Big 10 championship, the Big 12 championship a couple of times, but they had nothing to show for it. And now I think we've got a coaching staff that really cares, that's going to have a tough, hard-nosed football team every single Saturday that they're playing, that they're going to compete and try and beat all these teams into submission. We're going to see an entirely different squad, and I am thoroughly excited. After hearing what the assistant coaches said in their media time this past week, talking about the new 3-3-5 defense that's going to be ran, talking about the new offense, which is going to re-include the fullback, which is going to be huge in terms of getting yards in the run game. We're going to do a lot more running north-south than running sideline to sideline, which is great. I am thoroughly excited, man. Like, once the tickets, come out for the spring game, I'm going to be one that buys a spring game ticket. I go to that every single year. I think it's going to sell out because everybody is seeing all of this and they're curious as to see how this team is going to potentially look. I don't know, man. I can see 7+ wins this next year. I can sense something special, and don't call me crazy on this, but I can see a TCU type thing happen here in Lincoln. It's not going to take much to get this ball rolling. Once it gets rolling, watch out, because there's going to be another blue blood that's awake in the Big Ten, and it's going to be better for everybody.
And I'm with you. I think that that's very true. I think that there will be an awakening. I think that I am not quite with you quite yet on the TCU thing, just for the fact that I think TCU has been a more consistent team than we have been. Have they been as good as they were this season? Absolutely not. But I think they've been more consistent. But I mean, what you're saying is very true. We can see a surprise. You're saying a surprise team that comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, the only reason I'm saying TCU type thing, Nebraska has been pulling in better recruiting classes than TCU. They're they've got more talent than TCU has. Sonny Dykes was just able to go in and coach up whatever talent he has, and guess what? They're 13-1 and they're 1 game away from the national championship. So with Matt Rule here, he's got more talent to work with, and they're still adding people from the transfer portal. Dude, like, I may be crazy for saying this, but I would not be shocked if I see this Nebraska team win anywhere between 7, 10, maybe even 11 games next year. I think they are going to really surprise some people, and I would not be shocked to see a TCU type run.
And I'm with you, man. I think a surprising run where they show people who they really are is very possible. I think they're on the verge of that. I think that this team has the talent and it has the coaches. And like we both alluded to, they're not even done yet. I think that there's plenty more moves that will happen. Obviously, there's a lot of the offseason left, but spring ball's right around the corner, and we are both very excited for that moment. Unfortunately, I'm all the way out in Hawaii. Unless I can make something happen, I probably won't end up seeing that spring game. But I have a plan. I'm going to try to go to a game next season potentially. So that is something that I'm keeping on the radar. But biggest thing, we're moving on. Last thing we want to talk about with Husker football is moving on to looking towards the future, because we do that a lot on this show. We like to look towards the future. We look at the present. We like to look at the future too. Do you think that Nebraska's QB1 is Casey Thompson? Thompson is obviously in to stay. I think that he is very much knowing that this is not going to be just given to him. This is going to be a battle for that spot. But do you think we will see Casey Thompson as our quarterback come fall, or do you think we will see a different quarterback? And if so, who do you think it is?
I honestly think it will be Casey Thompson. He's not going to be available for spring, but I do think he will be the starting quarterback. Jeff Sims also makes an interesting case. He is that high tier transfer from Georgia Tech, a dual threat guy, very fast, but he's got a few years to develop yet. I think Jeff Sims is quite possibly going to be the next guy in line. But when it comes to fall and we get to fall camp, I see Casey Thompson once he's fully healthy. He just had surgery, so he's not going to be available for winter workouts or spring football. But once he is healthy during summer workouts and stuff, he is going to be the number one guy, because Matt Rule and staff has seen his film. Casey Thompson has very high potential in the right situation. He is an NFL caliber quarterback in the right situation. And I think this RPO type system that Satterfield is going to run is going to put Casey Thompson in that position. I wouldn't be shocked in some situations, though, if they run a 2-quarterback system where they run Jeff Sims maybe as a wildcat in a more quarterback run type play. Use Jeff Sims' speed. But I do think Casey Thompson will be the starter. What are your thoughts? Do you think Casey's going to be a starter, or do you think it's going to be Jeff Sims?
So I'm with you. I think it's is it Casey Thompson's to lose? Not in the sense that he has it in the bag, but I think it's his to lose in the sense that he has the talent, because he has talent. We have seen it. We saw it before he was a Husker, but since he has came to the Huskers, he has not had a very big drop in where his talent was. And I think that he very well could have, because this Husker team was a mess this last season.
Yeah.
We can be happy that they beat. We can be happy they went out with a win. We can be happy they didn't lose every game. We can be happy that we're moving on to a new coach. But we can't be happy about another lost, wasted Husker football season. I mean, you know what I'm saying? It's really disappointing, but Casey Thompson is a bright spot, and Casey Thompson is someone who helped us remain at least somewhat relevant and somewhat in a status
competitive.
Exactly. Competing in games. Thank you. Competing in games. He kept us in games. I would say Casey Thompson kept us in most games. Now, did he have his fair share of moments? Of course he did. Every quarterback does. But his interception numbers actually went down. Now, his touchdown numbers did as well, but it's not bad. If his interception numbers went up and his touchdown numbers went down, then that's different. But we're looking at both numbers being different. We're looking at different situations, different lineups, different schemes. And Casey Thompson, I would say, did he excel? I wouldn't say he excelled, but he did as much excelling as you can do in a team that was like it was last season, because it was a mess. Let's be honest.
Yes.
That team was a mess, and Casey Thompson still came out and put up performances and competed. So I think he's the quarterback. But I think the quarterback room is bright for the Huskers, looking past Thompson. I would say Thompson is kind of that in-between piece. He's going to help us get to a bowl game. He might even help us get back to Big Ten championship status, or at least close, but he's not going to be the quarterback that leads us to a national championship. But I think he is that next piece that gets us closer. So I think Casey Thompson is the future, no, but he is absolutely the present until he is done at Nebraska.
I absolutely agree with that. I think Casey Thompson, especially if they can rejuvenate that offensive line and get them playing, average to above average, and they can protect him a little more. Casey Thompson is a talent that, especially if we can utilize our weapons correctly, Nebraska can find themselves competing for a slot in that Big Ten championship game. Because as we all know, after this upcoming season, the divisions are gone. And this is Nebraska's shot to make some noise in the Big Ten. And I honestly think if they can do all those things, this team can make that noise. I think this team can get to where they want to be, which is in Indianapolis, vying for whatever it could be, a Rose Bowl bid, or hell, I'm not even going to say it, if they're even in a position where they may only have one loss, a playoff bid, because they're going to have a good resume to do something like that if they were to go through the season like they possibly could. I'm not going to say they will, but you get what I'm saying. It's one of those things. I do think Casey Thompson right now is that good stepping stone piece to get Nebraska back up to that next step of relevancy. I do think whether it's Jeff Sims next year or hell, Dylan Raiola, if he commits next year and he comes in as a true freshman and makes a lot of noise. I do think either one of those two quarterbacks could get us to that next step in 2024 and 2025. Nebraska will be back. Just mark my words. Nebraska will be back, and I cannot be more excited to say something like that. I haven't been able to say that in the last, 10, 15 years. None of us have. So Nebraska will be back, and I can't wait to see it happen before our eyes.
And I couldn't have said it any better, man. They will be back. And I think that we have seen that. Now, did they get the record will be back that we hoped we'd see this season? No, but we saw improvements once Frost was gone. And again, Frost was canned really early. Can we blame the whole season on Frost? No, because he was fired so early. But I think the season would have gone the same way either way. That was their... I'm going to say this right now. I think that this could very well be one of their last, if not their last, losing season for a decade. I maybe that's a big claim, but I think that we could be looking at their last losing season, or at least one of their last losing seasons for the next decade.
I agree.
Will they have rule for a decade? I don't know. I'm not going to say we'll have rule for a decade, but I'm going to say I think we will have a consistent team that's built and those morals are built. And maybe we won't see a championship for a decade. I'm not going to say we're going to see a national title for 10 years.
We may see a Big Ten championship or something in that time frame.
Yeah. We're going to see a Big Ten title within 5 years. Mark my words. Within 5 years, we're going to see a Big Ten title. But a national championship, I'm not sure, because when you add more teams, yes, it's better. It gives more teams an opportunity, but it also makes it harder and more competitive. So I think we're going to see this Husker team make it. Will they make it to the top of the mountain right away? No, but we're hiking up that mountain. We've been at the bottom for so long. At least we're hiking up now. So Husker football, we couldn't be more excited. We're going to have so much more exciting news going forward. Spring game action, everything going on. Husker news, absolutely more. Stay tuned for that. Moving on from Husker news, looking at some NFL action. The regular season is actually, I believe it is wrapping up as we record. Packers versus Eagles is going on, I believe, as we are going, or is that
the Packers Lions
is going on as we record. I'm not sure the status of that game. I was going to tune into it, but I'm not sure where we're at with that one. But that we are wrapping up the season. The season is pretty much done. I think that it is time, of course, again, the Lions are still going, the Packers are still going, but they are definitely not the top teams in their divisions. So that being said, we are looking at not divisions, well, divisions and conferences, but looking at conferences. We have seen a lot of great football this season. The NFL,
Yep.
in my opinion, has been a high point. This has been one of the better seasons, regular season wise, we have seen. Now, again, you're a Packers fan, which at least your Packers might have a chance. My Raiders, of course, as we all know, the Kansas City Chiefs were playing Ring Around the Rosie, so that just shows that we were a little bit out of the season. The fact that they were just toying with our defense is just awful. I couldn't watch that game. I couldn't watch that game, bro. I watched some of it, and then I was like, I can't do this. So Raiders are done. Raiders are out. Thank the Lord. I'm not even that upset. Let's move on. Let's get a different coach. But there are some teams, there are plenty of teams actually, that are still in the mix that are going for either their first Super Bowl or another Super Bowl. So that being said, I want to go through both conferences, but who do you think the best NFC and AFC teams are? Now, I know that there is a team that has the best record, of course, but I'm not even looking at that. We're talking about who is the best team, because records don't mean anything. Regular season records are great. Of course, they're great. But I'm talking about who is the best team in the AFC and NFC right now, because I'm going to tell you right now, at least one of my conferences, the team with the best record is not who I have as first. So
Yep.
who do you have for best team AFC and best team NFC?
I'm going to start with the NFC. I think the best team in the NFC is the San Francisco 49ers. And I'm sure you probably have them pinpointed as the best as well. Their defense is absolutely incredible. Their offense is pretty good too. They finished 13-4 in the regular season, 8-1 at home. They're honestly my pick to make it to the Super Bowl in the NFC slot. As far as AFC goes, that it gets kind of tricky there. I can pinpoint a few teams, but I'm gonna say it's really tough. The Chiefs are obviously very good, but their defense to a point has a little to be desired. They played good against the Raiders yesterday. But their defense does give up some points. I'm gonna have to go with Buffalo, man. Best team in the AFC. I think they're more consistent on the defensive side of the ball. Their offense is really good, scores a lot of points. My best two teams in the NFL are the Buffalo Bills and the San Francisco 49ers. What are yours? Oh, you're muted.
Oh, my bad, man. My bad. Anyway, so no, I think we've seen a lot of really high caliber football this season, but I think that we have not seen the records coincide with that for every team, like the Lions. Again, they're as we record this episode, of course, their fate, whether they make the playoffs or not, will be decided after we wrap up. You know, the episode will be posted once the deciding factor's out. But regardless, they are 8-8, I believe, as we record this episode. They are a really talented team. They
Yep.
are a team that has, you know, they started the season 1-6 and they bounced back. They are a high caliber team for the moment, but who has been a high caliber team all the way through? When we look at AFC, it's got to be the Bills, 13-3. Now, they're not the best team in the AFC record wise. I believe the Chiefs are in front of them.
14-3. Yep.
The reason I have the Bills as the best team is because if any team gives this team nightmares, it's the Chiefs. Me and you both know this as football junkies. We have seen the Chiefs and Bills match up multiple times. Regular season, playoffs, it does not matter. It is a dogfight every single time.
Yep.
But this Bills team is ready. This Bills team today, this Bills team, as we record this episode, had a great performance. They look like a team, of course, coming off of a really scary incident. I would say one of the scariest, if not the scariest incidences in NFL history. That was terrifying. I mean, that was ridiculous. That was insane. Luckily, he's okay, but the Bills, they've had their trials, they've had their tribulations, football or otherwise, but this team is by far the best team in the AFC. I think that the Bills are a team that this is their year. Will they win a Super Bowl? I'm not sure. But this is their year to be the best team in the AFC because they are absolutely high caliber on both sides of the football. And I think it's going to show in the playoffs. I think that this team is going to blow through the playoffs. And I think that they are going to be that AFC championship team. So I think the Bills are the best team regular season. And I think they will absolutely carry that over into the playoffs. And then when we go to NFC, I've got to give the Eagles. Eagles are, in my opinion, there's been a lot of controversy, a lot of talk, a lot of the talking heads have gone back and forth. Is the team great because of Hurts, or is it just a great team? Well, here's the deal. The quarterback is an integral part of every single football team, no matter what level. It could be pro, college, high school, middle school, pee-wee football. It doesn't matter. The quarterback runs one side of the ball, and the other side of the football doesn't really have a set leader. So the quarterback is arguably the leader of the entire squad.
Mm-hmm.
In my opinion, I think Hurts is that guy. He is that guy that has led that squad, but they are also a team that is great beyond him. They have a great defense. They have a great offense. In my personal opinion, the teams that I picked as the best, the Eagles and the Bills, I think that's our Super Bowl. I think that could be our Super Bowl. And I think that would be one of the most exciting, evenly matched Super Bowls we have seen. I would take the Bills on top of the Eagles because just of experience. I think Allen has more experience in moments where it matters. I think that team is maybe a little bit better constructed. But I think these are the teams that have made their mark in their conferences. So I've got Bills for the AFC and I've got Eagles for the NFC. But again, there are so many really, high-powered teams. And again, the season is wrapping up today, but there's so much more of the season left. I would say the real exciting action and the real season starts when we get to the playoffs. So the real exciting NFL news is still yet to come. But speaking of NFL news, of course, me and you both knew the Broncos head coach was probably not going to keep his job. Had the Broncos head coach kept his job, I would have thought that there was a mutiny going on in that organization because that Broncos team was awful. Russell Wilson, Broncos country, let's ride. Mr. Meme is what I'm going to call him because he's just a meme. That's all he's really become. And it's a little bit sad because he is a really talented guy and he stands for a lot of really good things, but he has become a meme. So there's no way around that. But it has not been a successful season. Broncos head coach was fired, and now they are on the search. We have talked about Harbaugh, but there's also a rumor of Sean Payton potentially getting an interview. There was a potential rumor that he had the green light to potentially get interviewed, but I have heard that the Harbaugh thing is actually more of a set deal than maybe what the media has said. There's a lot of people alluding to the fact that that is a legitimate interview. Will that move forward? I don't know. And you'll notice when Harbaugh addressed this, he didn't say that it wasn't a real thing, but he said he was planning on staying with Michigan. So I think Harbaugh is absolutely at least entertaining this Broncos job, but it all depends on the interview. So when we talk about, Peyton and Harbaugh, between these two guys, let's say that in some world this really happens and Harbaugh and Peyton are interviewed. Between these two guys, who would you pick if you were picking a coach for the Broncos? Would it be Sean Payton or Jim Harbaugh?
I would honestly go Sean Payton. I think Sean Payton would be a very good fit in that situation. But I don't think the whole problem in that organization was the head coach. I think it starts at the, above that with the other management and leadership positions that are on that team. I don't foresee Jim Harbaugh leaving his situation like I alluded to earlier at Michigan. I honestly think the Broncos are going to give Sean Payton a call. I think Sean Payton's going to be a really good fit. He had a really competitive squad down in New Orleans, as we all know, won a Super Bowl with the Saints. So I honestly think it'll be Sean Payton. What about you?
So yeah, I mean, like you said, it's very obvious that, Peyton's had more success as an NFL coach. And if I am looking for a coach to take an organization that has been just abysmal, and I'm a Raiders guy, again, I love hating on the Raiders. Not the Raiders, the Broncos. I love hating on the Broncos. I'm a Raiders guy. I love hating on the Broncos, but I do not think the Broncos should be the team that they are at the moment. As much as I love hating on them, I don't like to see them lose. I want to see the Raiders and the Broncos be competing for the AFC, not at the bottom of the AFC. So
Right.
I want this Broncos team to improve. And I will say that I think when we look at NFL versus college coach experience, to take an NFL team to the next level, you need a coach that has that NFL experience. Harbaugh is not that guy. Will he get that interview? I think absolutely he'll get that interview. I think it's actually more a clear-cut chance that he gets an interview and that's real than Peyton getting an interview. Because the Sean Payton situation is just a rumor. There's no clear-cut call that he is getting that interview. It is a very highly tracked rumor, and I really trust the source it comes from. But, Jim Harbaugh, I think, is a lock for an interview. Sean Payton is a little bit less. I don't look at it quite as a lock because I don't think we know for sure. But I think that when we look between those two guys, I'm picking Peyton. He's an NFL Super Bowl winning coach. I will pick 10 times out of 10. Yeah, Harbaugh's won the Big Ten championship. That is not the same as the Super Bowl. Now, I will give it this. It is a different award. It is a different championship. They're different levels for a lot of different reasons. They're just completely different. But I would absolutely give the job to Peyton. I think that is a coach that could, unfortunately, again, as a Raiders fan, please, McDaniels, get him out of there. Can we get Sean Payton? I'll take Peyton. I'll take anybody. I'll take anybody at this point over McDaniels. So I would honestly really, really as a Raiders fan, I would be upset because of how good of a position this would be filled by Peyton. So I think Sean Payton would be the better fit, but I think that Harbaugh is the more legitimate situation at the moment. So, obviously we'll track this by the time we do our next episode. I bet it'll be all said and done. But looking at that, before we move on from the Broncos, I'm ready to stop talking about them, trust me. But before we move on, do you think with a better head coach, Russell Wilson and this entire team, not just Wilson, because it's not just been Wilson. You can't blame the Broncos on just Wilson.
Right.
Will this organization move forward and become a potential contender, or at least a team that is back to winning 8 to 9 games this season? Do you think it is a coaching situation, a quarterback situation, an organization situation? Do you think a new head coach will make a big difference for this Broncos team and specifically for Wilson?
I think it's an organizational issue. I think it's dealing with the organization, everything that's gone on. I do think a new head coach can really thoroughly improve Russell Wilson's situation because that would put him in a better spot. As we all know, Russell Wilson's still a really good quarterback. We're not denying that at all. But he was put in a very, very difficult spot this year with the prior coaching staff and prior leadership. I honestly do think if you get the right guys in place there, the Broncos can be a contender. They can be a contender in the division with the Kansas City Chiefs, the Raiders, all those teams. You got to get the right guy in place.
And this was the Husker problem. It's not that the talent isn't there. It's you have to have both. We've never seen, in my personal opinion, I've never seen a team that has been just successful because of the athletes. It has to also be the coach. The one team I will say that comes close, that 2015-16 Cleveland Cavaliers team that won that championship. I don't want to disrespect Tyronn Lue, but I will say I think that is one example where the coach didn't matter as much and it was more the team. But for the most part, across all professional sports, no matter if it's baseball, hockey, football, you need to have a really, really solid head coach filling that position. The Broncos haven't had that since they won a championship. Let's be honest. The Broncos fell off instantly. They won a championship.
After Peyton Manning.
That was it. And it's because that's who made that team so great. Peyton Manning, Von Miller, there were so many pieces. Demaryius Thomas, there were so many pieces of that team that made that team great. Was the head coach great? That's up to interpretation. The team was great, but they've not had a great coach, and now they don't really have a great team either. They've got talent. Do I think Russell Wilson could be their potential savior. I'm not going to call him a savior. Do I think he could help the team move forward? Absolutely. I think he could absolutely be a bright spot, but I think you need to bring some vets. I think we need vets. The Broncos need vets. They don't have, I mean, they have Wilson. He's a vet, of course, but I think you need more vets to match up with that IQ and match up with that level. And I don't think this Broncos team has that core built in. They have that young talent. They have that vet in Wilson as quarterback, but you need to kind of mesh together. And I think to connect that, you need to bring some more vets in and also maybe just look at different roster changes. So, of course, this is an ongoing situation. I mean, we don't even know for sure if Harbaugh or, we don't even know that that's going to happen. We don't know that Harbaugh is going to be a coach. We know that Peyton's going to be the coach. We don't even know if Peyton is an actual interview. But what we do know is these are two names that have been thrown around and they've been mainstream. And between the two, I think we can both agree Peyton, a Super Bowl winning quarterback, would be better, or a Super Bowl winning coach would be better. But I think at the end of the day, both would work out for that team because they have kind of gone through a list of coaches that have been just no-name coaches. Do you need to have top tier, well-known coaches that were great players or just known as great coaches? You don't need that, but that's really important to have some level there of greatness on the coach side as well. It cannot just be the players. So I think this Broncos team is on the right track. Unfortunate again, I don't want that to happen. I'm a Raiders guy. I'm worried. I think that if we don't lose our head coach, we will be going the other way and the Broncos will be going the right way. But the hope is that doesn't happen. But moving on, our last NFL topic of this episode, I want to talk about, as we wrap up this season, we've had a lot of surprises, both good and bad. What would you say are the biggest surprise teams in a good way and the biggest disappointment teams, obviously, in a bad way? Who would you say are some teams you would throw out when you talk about teams that really surprised us in a good way, and maybe some teams that surprised us in not a good way?
I'm going to start with a team that is really surprised this year, and they are the winners of the AFC South, the Jacksonville Jaguars, man. They lost, they only won what, 2 games last year? And now they're 9-8, and they won the AFC South. And they're in the playoffs. They're what a remarkable turnaround. And that all has to go on Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence improved so much as a quarterback over last year. Another team that I'm pleasantly surprised with, the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins were pretty competitive all year. They are in the playoffs as well. Another team that also clinched a playoff bid that surprised me is the Giants. Giants looked pretty good most of the year. And then I'm going to go with another surprising team in the Seattle Seahawks, because nobody knew who the Seattle Seahawks were. And Geno Smith went in and he broke Russell Wilson's single season passing yards record as his first year as a starter in Seattle, excuse me. Teams that really disappointed me, in a very bad way. I'm sorry I have to do you like this, but the Las Vegas Raiders.
Hey, how can you not mention them? If you didn't mention them, I'd be concerned.
Las Vegas Raiders had a lot of talent. They brought in Devontae Adams. Everybody was like, yeah, the Raiders are going to be super dangerous in the AFC West. They were anything but dangerous in the AFC West. Finished 6-11, extremely disappointing year with all the talent on their roster. They're looking for a new head coach. Hopefully they can get somebody in there that can actually turn things around. I'm going to stick in the division for the other team, the Denver Broncos. Denver Broncos is another one of those situations where everybody thought that, ooh, Russell Wilson's going to Denver. Like, this team is going to be really dangerous. Again, like the Raiders, they're anything but dangerous. Finishing 5-12, didn't really put a scare in anybody this year. Another team that was an extreme disappointment as well, which hopefully, well, I'm a Packers fan, so I could really care less how they draft. But the Chicago Bears finishing 3-14. I'm going to say it again. 3-14, man. They finished on a 10-game losing streak. That is the epitome of bad. But I'm going to give them credit on this. They got themselves a quarterback. Justin Fields is going to be their franchise quarterback. He's the only reason why that they found themselves in numerous games this past year. The question is, can they draft well to, back things up? Another team that really disappointed is the defending Super Bowl champ, Los Angeles Rams, finishing 5-12 on the year. Everybody had them slated as making the playoffs or maybe even repeating to defend their title. They didn't. They weren't anywhere close to that. They were extremely inconsistent this year, which explains their 5-12 record. Another team, even though they happen to win their division, but they're in the worst division in football that kind of disappointed this year, is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And they're somehow still going to host a damn playoff game, finishing 8-9. Just wrap your head around that for a moment. 8-9, and we're going to host a dang playoff game. Honestly, there are other teams in other divisions that could rightfully take Tampa Bay's spot, because I honestly don't think they deserve a playoff spot at this point.
I'm with you. No, I'm with you. I think that it's ridiculous that they get that spot. I don't think they've earned that. And I'm not a Brady hater. I think me and you have talked about Tom Brady a lot on this show, and we're not Brady haters. It's just, I don't think that's a team as a whole, record wise, that really earned that spot.
Yeah, I agree. They were one of the most inconsistent teams all year long. And they have a slightly better record than the last three teams in their division. Tampa Bay finishes 8-9. Panthers, it's a three-way tie for second place in that division, man. Like, how on it? That division is so disgraceful to the NFL. It is terrible. And
it's
now
the worst.
And now Tampa Bay has a shot to go win a Super Bowl with a losing record. It's disgraceful. There are other teams that are more worthy than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Oh, without a doubt.
And I might have some Tampa Bay fans coming at me after I say that, but I don't care. I'm like, if you are a true NFL fan, you would see where I'm coming from. It is absolutely ridiculous. And I'm going to stand up on top of that hill until I'm blue in the face. Till I can't breathe no more. Tampa Bay should not be in the playoffs, but they find themselves in the playoffs with a losing record and a shot to win another Super Bowl. But I'm going to get off of that. A team that I'm just going to go with just a kind of surprise, just based off of like their point differential of where they're at, is the Minnesota Vikings. Yeah, they finished 13-4, but they have allowed more points on defense than they have scored on offense, and they're still 13-4. Try and wrap your head around that too, man. It is ridiculous. 424 points scored, 427 points allowed. You don't see a team with that good a record give up that many points. You look at a team with a similar record like the Philadelphia Eagles, 477 points for, 344 points against. You see teams like that with a plus 100 and above differential in points. I'm kind of shocked that the Vikings were able to keep themselves afloat. and they finished 13-4, and they are the number 2 seed in the NFC. I think it may be the 49ers. I'm not sure. It's been a crazy year. Absolutely crazy year, and it flew by. And I could go on and on about the Buccaneers, but I'm not going to. I think I laid into them enough. What are your surprise teams, good and bad, this year?
Absolutely no. And I think, the Buccaneers, let's not call it hate. It's not hate, but the Buccaneers criticism is definitely warranted because this Bucs team was supposed to be that team and they definitely are not. So, the Bucs criticism is warranted. When we talk about most disappointing teams, like you said, you didn't want to, put my team first, but you had to. I've got to put the Packers as my first team I'm going to talk about. Now, as we are recording this episode, like I said, they are playing the Lions, trying to get, I believe it's that spot. They're both going for that spot. They're both seeing who's going to get.
The Packers are now up 16-13 in the third quarter as we speak.
Minute and 57 left in that third quarter. Of course, there's plenty of football left. Packers have that lead. Even if the Packers make the playoffs, Aaron Rodgers is your quarterback, and you are 8-8. And you are lucky to be 8-8, might I add. You are competing for a playoff spot. You're competing against the Lions. This is not Packers football. I'm sorry. I'm not a Packers fan, but I'm also not a Packers hater. So I feel like I'm pretty impartial in this. I'm not a Packers hater. I'm not here to hate them. I'm definitely not a Bears fan trying to come in here and, try to, talk. Bears have no room to talk. They've had no.
Yeah.
I mean, my goodness, they haven't had success since like 10 years before I was even thought of. So the Bears have not been a successful team for a minute, but this Packers team, they do not have the success for who they have leading this team. So the first team I have, even if they make the playoffs, which I've got them beating the Lions. Yeah, I want to see the Lions make the playoffs, not at the expense of the Packers. I don't think I think the Packers, I think they'll pull it off. I really do. So
with the Seahawks winning today, I might add the Lions are eliminated from playoff contention, even if they beat the Packers tonight.
There we go.
The only team that can clinch is the Packers if they beat the Lions.
So there we go. But the Packers, if they do not win, they will not make the playoffs either. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so they're still competing. I will admit, I did not know. I have not been on my NFL business today. Usually I spend all day watching the games. I did not do that today. But so Lions have nothing to lose except they, of course, want to eliminate the Packers. So, but even if the Packers make it to the playoffs, no matter how far they make it, if they make the playoffs somehow, I don't have them making it past the wild card. But if they do make the playoffs, they are still an underwhelming team. Yes, they lost Adams. Yes, they don't have the team that they have had in the past, but you have Aaron Rodgers and you have enough talent that you should win more than 8 games or potentially 9 games. So that's what I have to say about the Packers. I'm going right into the Raiders. I've got to go into the Raiders because the Raiders are my team. And who would I be if I didn't criticize them? The Raiders, this was a lost season. We made the playoffs last season with a head coach that was fired. A star player that got in a horrific accident that was, of course, on him because of drunk driving. And we made the playoffs. This all happened early. I don't even think that happened before November. All of that happened before November, I believe, if I'm correct. And we made the playoffs. We have Devontae Adams. We have Derek Carr. Granted, we had injuries. We had a bunch of injuries. I will give you that. But there is no reason we should have missed the playoffs. This was a missed year. This was a lost year. This was a terrible year. And you can write this year off. And it was capped off by that Chiefs loss. The Chiefs know they're going to the playoffs. The Chiefs know they're probably going to the AFC Championship game. They were toying with that Raiders defense, toying with that Raiders offense, toying with the Raiders in general. And the Raiders just laid down and let them roll over. So we got steamrolled. Terrible season, hoping for a bounce back without a different head coach, though. It doesn't matter if we get Tom Brady. I know there's a rumor we might get Brady. It doesn't matter if we get Brady. If McDaniels is there, we will not be successful. Going on, I don't want to get too hung up on that. The Arizona Cardinals are a team that I think was disappointing. Murray went out. JJ Watt's not what he was. But this is a team that they are looked at as a team that was supposed to at least be in the playoffs. Did I look at them as a championship contender? No, definitely not. I'm going to be honest. This Cardinals team, are they decent? They're fine. They've been decent. They've had those stints. Even with Fitzgerald, when he was running, wide receiver, they still had pretty good years. But they've not been great. But they've had more greatness than they've had. But of course, missing it, not having that season that they thought, not looking like the team we thought they would. So they're another team that's disappointing. The Tennessee Titans have been a team that has been consistently in the AFC Championship, or at least consistently in the talk for will they make it all the way there. They have been a team within the last 5 years that we have seen make the playoffs, be consistent, be successful, and show us that they are a consistent team on both sides of the ball. Jacksonville Jaguars, give them respect. They had a terrible season, an awful season. Trevor Lawrence was absolutely written out. Bounce back, comeback season. They look great, but I just really think this Tennessee Titans team shouldn't even have been in a position to be eliminated like they were. So Titans are another one. And then my last disappointing one, it's a little bit of a unique one. The Jets, the New York Jets, because they started off strong and then they fizzled out. The New York Jets made both of us in episode 1 and 2, and maybe even 3, they made us believe in New York teams again. I have not believed in the New York team for years, whether that be baseball, and I'm a Yankees guy, whether that be baseball, football, basketball, it doesn't matter. I don't believe in New York for sports. For marketing, sure. For winning, no. That Jets team made you want to believe a little bit more. Now, of course, New Jersey, that New York team made you believe. But moving on, I want to stick in the New York area. For most surprising teams in a good way, the New York Giants on the other side of this coin. Did they have as much success as they should have had down the stretch? Maybe not, but they had more success than they've had for years. They've had more success than they've had since Manning was the quarterback, and even before then, because let's not forget, Manning's last few years as quarterback for New York were not glamorous. He's a Super Bowl quarterback. He's a legendary quarterback, but he did not have very glamorous, a very glamorous curtain call for that team. So I've got the Giants as one of my best surprises. I'm with you on the Dolphins. I'm with you on the Vikings. I also have the Lions. And this is what I'll say. I have the Packers on the other side of the coin of this, even if they don't win this. I have the Packers as one of the, most disappointing teams, which might I add, we are 16-13 with 14:55 left in the fourth. Packers have the ball. Again, I still think I have that taken care of. I think they'll come up with it. But the Lions are a team that went 1-6 in their first 7 games, and now they're 8-8. An absolutely insane run. An absolutely historic run, a run where Campbell is going to stay coach. I was worried. I like Campbell, and I was worried. I was like, because of the lack of success they had record-wise, I was worried they weren't going to keep him. But I think they're going to keep him. They'd be stupid not to keep him. Goff has played great. This Lions team looks fantastic. Could they still pull it off? Could we come back next episode and the Lions are in the playoffs? Absolutely. The Packers are not that team to stop them. But I just think this Lions team doesn't have what it takes to beat an Aaron Rodgers-led, Packers team. But Lions still, even so, 1-6, and now they're 8-8, and they look like that team that really can make that push and could. I think will I give them a playoff lock next season? No, but I'll give them a playoff contention next season, absolutely, just to get into those playoffs. I think they'll be there. So you never know. Maybe we'll come back and Lions are in, but I still have Packers. So that kind of wraps up our NFL segment. We are going to start, of course, we have focused a lot of football. It's been football season, but football season, even for NFL, is coming to an end, at least for the regular season. So we need to start looking at some of our other sports that are going on at the moment, and that would be basketball. So the first thing we're going to look at tonight, we're going to look at some college basketball in this episode. And the first thing that I really want to look at, and I think we should focus in on in regards to college basketball, is let's just look at that top 25. Let's talk about that top 25. Are there any teams that surprise us in a good way? They're in the top 25 and we didn't expect them. Or are there some teams that we think should be that aren't, or teams that should be higher up? When we look at the top 25 basketball rankings, what are your initial thoughts on how that looks for college basketball at the moment?
There are some surprises, obviously. pleasant surprises. One of the big surprises that stands out to me is UConn. UConn is, well, as of the last update, they're 15-1. They just beat Creighton this weekend, and they're sitting at number 4, and they could probably find themselves in the number 1 spot because Purdue just got their first loss of the year. You got the same namestays up there. You've got Kansas, who is up there vying for a spot. You've got, Alabama, who's been good. Texas has been kind of a pleasant surprise. They're good. Arizona is as good as they've ever been. You've got all these teams that we're used to seeing in this spot. A team that I'm kind of shocked, especially with how the season started, that, they've kind of fallen off, is Creighton. Because I'm pretty sure, when we started this back up, Creighton was preseason number 7. And they started off the season with a bang. And then they, lost a couple of games. They lost to Nebraska, which it was Nebraska's first win in Omaha since the 90s. I think 95 was the last time they beat Creighton in Omaha. And then they went on, a 5 or 6 game losing streak after that. They seem to find their footing. They lose by 9 to UConn, which I'm not entirely surprised. UConn is really good. They've got a really good big. So, yeah. Outside of that, there's no true surprise in my opinion. I think all the teams that are on the top 25 right now deserve to be there, rightfully so. I mean, look at all their records. I mean, the records really say everything. And I'm sure you'll say the same thing. What are your thoughts on this top 25? Do you think that there's anybody that should be on there, or do you think the teams that are worthy are already on the list as we speak?
So I'm going to say this right now. I think the teams that are worthy are absolutely on this list. But if you would ask me this time last season, will Duke be 16th? I would not tell you that. I would tell you Duke will be top 10. There's
Yeah.
plenty of season left. Their record is phenomenal. They've been playing great basketball, but they are still not quite up where they were with Coach K. Now, again, it goes year by year. We've seen teams, even with Coach K in the lead, we've seen teams that have not been super successful. Even if you have a great coach, it also takes a great, properly built, well-developed team. And we've not always seen that. Arguably this last season, other than Blanquero, that absolutely talented player that's now a Orlando Magic player, I don't think that Duke team was really anything to look at, but they still made it all the way and almost made it to the championship. This Duke team we have seen so far is not to that caliber. And I think the fact that you lose that staple coach is probably a part of it, but should that really matter? Should that matter? That's the question. Should it matter? We could ask that with Harbaugh if he leaves Michigan. Should it matter if you lose your coach to lose all that success? Should that be a defining factor? I don't think it should be, but I think we have seen that with this Duke team. Another team that I have been kind of underwhelmed with is Baylor. They're sitting at 19th at 10-5. Now, again, that's a solid record. That's better than a lot of other teams. But Baylor still, in my opinion, should be a more high caliber team and up there more with wins. And I think we've seen them lose a couple of games in fashions that have not been very good for them long term, because it's early in the season. There's plenty of season left, but you've got to look to March. We're in January. Yeah, there's plenty of season left. March will come up before you know it. March Madness will come up before you know it. And you don't get second chances in March Madness. So I just think this Baylor team, the way they've played basketball, they're a team that needs a lot of second chances, even if they're winning. And you're not going to get second chances when it comes to March Madness. So some underwhelming things, but some things I'm happy with. Houston, 16-1. I picked them in my Final Four. I stick with that. Kansas sitting at number 3, coming off of winning the chip, obviously 14-1. They're looking great. I'm really pleased with Connecticut. I will admit, I am very pleased with Connecticut because I think women's basketball, they are known as a staple of sports. Men's basketball, they've been great. They've had great teams, but they have not always performed the way that I think we would like to see them perform, because their women's program is phenomenal. Women's basketball for you, I mean, it's ridiculous. We don't see that for men's ball. We want to see it even. I would like every university to have an even showing, because then you're seeing good on both sides, and you get to see two different teams compete and put up high caliber wins, championships, points, stats for that school. So I think it'd be great to have more schools be more evenly matched when you have those sports. So UConn being up there is huge for me. And, like you alluded to, I mean, we have a lot of great teams that are in this top 25. And I definitely think every single team deserves to be in here. I want to say one more team that I'm very impressed with at the moment, and that is Iowa State. They're currently sitting at 25th at 12-2. They are 8-0 for their conference, I believe, or at least maybe not 8-0 for their conference. They're an 8-0 run, 2-1 in the conference. But either way, they are looking like a great team. They're looking like a team that could get it done. Iowa State, I think, is kind of having a rejuvenation as a school for sports. I think we've seen their football team has kind of started to pick up. They didn't have as much success as I think they had hoped this season, but their sports programs are picking up, and with that, basketball is picking up, and 12-2 is a solid standing. And I think that Iowa State is a team that will stay in that top 25. A team like Charleston sitting 23rd, will they stay top 25 the whole season? Probably not. But Iowa State, I think, will stay a cement. And I think come February, we'll see them more in that top 15, top 10 spot. So Iowa State has impressed me, not just their record, but how they have played the game. So college basketball is in full swing, and we are both extremely excited. College ball is super, super hype. I'm really excited for March Madness as always. But looking at college basketball from the Husker standpoint, I want your thoughts. Looking at Husker hoops,
Yep.
what are your initial thoughts? Now, this is as a whole on Husker hoops. What are your initial thoughts on Husker hoops so far this season?
Husker hoops are in a better spot this season than they have been the last few years of Fred Hoiberg. They have gone from a offensive oriented team to now a defensive, grinded out, kind of beat teams into submission type team. And you see that in the results. They're sitting at 9-7 right now. They just beat Minnesota on the road, moved to 2-3. Let's pull up the standings real quick. Let's see, Big Ten. There we go. Yeah, they're really competitive this year. And it shows. They're 9-7, they're 2-3. They've been pretty good at home. They're 6-1 at their home court at Pinnacle Bank Arena. And they're not exploding on teams as far as points go, but they're winning the 60 to 50 something type games and stuff like that because they're playing really good defense. And in this league, you need a really good defense because obviously if you can't stop the other team from scoring, you're going to have to try and keep up on offense. And in a lot of cases, you can't. So those are kind of my thoughts while short. I think Nebraska is in a good spot. I think they can find themselves in position to make things interesting come February into March when we get to the Big Ten tournament and stuff. Because I do think this team can make some noise and maybe even ruin a couple of team seasons, as well as maybe even making a little noise on their resume, because their resume right now, they've played a lot of quad one teams. If they can find a way, because they've got a few more quad one teams on their schedule, if they can find a way to knock off 3 or 4 of them, this team can be a bubble team come March. What are your thoughts on this Husker squad?
So like you've alluded to, this Husker squad is better than what we've seen by a lot. This is a drastic jump. We talked Husker hoops. I think episode 1 was our big talk of Husker hoops first for season 2. And I think when we talked to them at first, I was skeptical. I was like, this could be a team that could get closer to where they need to get, but it will not quite get there. But a team that on December 10th only lost 65-62 against Purdue, the number one ranked team, I might add you, that shows me that we are fighting in games. Like you've alluded to, we are competing. We're beating Iowa. We're beating, we're competing. We're beating Minnesota. We are fighting down to the last second. Our most recent win was against Minnesota, 81-79. That was a hard fought game down to the last second. It was a super competitive matchup. This Husker basketball team has not competed like this before in the Big Ten.
The last time, I'm sorry for cutting you off. The last time they've really truly competed in the Big Ten was, I think, Tim Miles second to last year. Here when Nebraska was 22-11 and like 13-5 in Big Ten play, and they still didn't make March Madness. They made it to the NIT, which still makes me think a little bit. I'm like, that team was definitely good enough to make March, but go on. I'm sorry for cutting you off.
No, and again, great thoughts right there. I agree with you. I think that, Tim Miles, we had some success. We didn't have enough success. We have had virtually no success with Hoiberg until this season. Again, can we say it's still early? I think the college basketball is one of the seasons that goes by the fastest. Can we say it's still early? Of course we can, because it is still early, but it will go by quick. And before you know it, it's March Madness. Do I think the Huskers are a lock?
No.
Without a doubt, absolutely no. They are not a lock. Do I think this Husker team has a better chance of competing and getting closer to that and maybe making a push? Absolutely. This Husker team, top to bottom, is the most competitive, well-rounded basketball team that we have seen in so long. And I think the turning of the tides for Husker athletics is huge, because we have seen a fall off. Has Husker basketball ever been that notable? I'm going to be honest, I don't really think so. It has been fine, but it has never been that notable. But the fact that I think we are turning the tides, and we are potentially turning the tides with a coach that we really took a leap to get, that's a good sign. Whether or not we keep Hoiberg in the future, going forward, within the next 5-10 years, whether he's still around, no matter what that means, I don't know. But I think he has helped reshape the culture. And with that, I think this team has just been a big boost. And I think we've just seen a better, a better team that knows how to contribute at all ends. When we beat Creighton, we didn't just beat them by like 2 points. We beat them by 10 points. You don't beat Creighton by 10 points if you're not a well-rounded team. I'm sorry. You really do not. You don't lose to the number one team in the nation by only 3 points if you're not a well-rounded team. So I'm going to stand on my soapbox and say that I think that this Husker basketball team is the real deal. I'm not putting a bet on them making anything with March Madness, doing anything like that, but I am saying they are absolutely a team that is on the uprising. And I think that actually, when we looked, because we talked about this last season, Hoiberg, Frost, these are two coaches that have not had a lot of success. Which one, if any, makes more sense to keep? A lot of fans would have said Frost, but Hoiberg, I think, is a coach that is going to deliver. I really believe that Hoiberg will deliver, and we're seeing that. So this Husker team is absolutely showing up. And with that, we've got a really, really stacked next couple of games. We have Illinois, Purdue, Ohio State, and Penn State. Within those 4 games, what is your prediction we will go?
I honestly think we're going to start with Illinois, obviously, and that's on Tuesday night at Pinnacle Bank Arena. I mentioned Nebraska's record at home. They are 6-1. 6-1. Illinois is 1-3 in the conference so far. So they have not played very good in the conference. I think Nebraska beats Illinois. They go to Purdue. That's going to be really tough, and that's 3 days after they play Illinois. Really tough game against the number 1 team in the country. But they took them down to the wire when they played them last. I don't think Nebraska is going to win, but I think they can scare Purdue one more time this season. I think Nebraska loses a relatively close one to Purdue. I think Nebraska keeps it within 2 or 3 possessions. Then we got Ohio State at home. Ohio State is a very beatable squad. They're good. They're 10-5. They're 2-2 in conference. Ranked number 24 in the country. But again, I mentioned Nebraska's success at home. They play really good on the home court. I think Nebraska can get Ohio State at home on the 18th. So that puts them 2-1 in those first 3 games. And then they play Penn State. Penn State isn't great. They're beatable. They're kind of the same level as Nebraska. I have them going 3-1 in the next 4 games. That's if Nebraska can stay consistent on both sides of the floor. If they're not consistent, I can easily see 1-3. It all starts with consistency. Are they getting their rebounds? When they're shooting it, are they actually making it? Are they making their free throws? Are they turning the ball over, or are they getting turnovers? Those things all play into it. And I think if Nebraska can get all those things, I think they can find themselves 3-1. What are your thoughts?
And again, as Husker fans, it's easy to be in a spot where it seems to be overly optimistic, but I am with you, but I'm going to take a step above, and I've not done this. I want to say this in the history of our show. I have never once been more optimistic about the Huskers than you have. I have been pretty close. I was going 4-0. I really do. But like you said, it's like the swing of the pendulum. It's either 4-0 or 0-4, if I'm being honest. Because again, I will say I don't see us losing to Illinois. I think regardless of if we throw the rest of the 3 games in that little 4-game schedule, I think we've got Illinois. Illinois has not shown up and not shown that they're a team that can beat the Huskers, even if we're beating ourselves. So either way, I think we'll go 1-3. But I've got us going 4-0. Purdue, we should have won that game. And what I mean by that is there are moments in that game, like you know, that we should have won that game. We absolutely should have won that game. Purdue is a team that we can scare and then beat. So I've got us beating Purdue. Ohio State, they're a solid team. But again, I think this Husker team can compete against every team in the Big Ten. And we've seen that, especially with that Purdue game they've already had. So I've got them taking care of Ohio State. And then Penn State, can you yawn at Penn State? You can never yawn at Penn State. I don't care what sport it is, bowling, basketball, football. You can't yawn at Penn State. Penn State is great, but we've got them. We've got Penn State. We've got the Penn State basketball team. So I've got us going 4-0. Again, that is a really optimistic call. I will be holding to that, and I will be making sure that I'm taking responsibility if that does not happen.
If they go 4-0 in this stretch, that's 2 more quad 1 wins. 2 more quad 1 wins. They would be sitting at 13-7, 6-3 in conference, man.
It'd be insane.
It would be absolutely insane. I guarantee you, if Nebraska goes 4-0 over this next stretch and keeps hot, if they go 4-0, man, there's going to be a lot of talking heads out there talking about Nebraska for March, which is nuts. Because again, that's 2 more quad 1 wins. That's a better resume than some of these other teams have. It's kind of crazy to think about. Like it's been a while.
No, you wouldn't think we'd be in this position. I wouldn't think we would be. I didn't think this time last season we'd be in this position this time this season to maybe make a push. We have not been that team, but we are looking like that team now. Maybe we are that team. I think this will be to be continued, because I think that this Husker team can absolutely make a push. but I also think this team can definitely blow games like they have. So I think this Husker team is on the verge. We're on the verge of greatness. We're getting closer. Do I think we are completely there quite yet? I'm going to be honest, I don't think we are. Do I think we will get there? Absolutely. But I've got us going 4-0. And if we go 4-0, that makes a statement.
Oh, that's a big statement.
4-0, especially with Big Ten conference games, that shows them who we are. So let's hope we can go 4-0. But at the minimum, I think we can go 3-1. You alluded to 3-1. I agree with you on that. But again, it could go either side. It could go either side of the coin, because these Big Ten teams, if you fall off even for a second, especially in basketball, how fast paced it is, that's it. These Big Ten teams will eat you up. Nebraska has to be on their A game, but they have been on their A game. We have seen them on their A game. Their last game, they were on their A game. So I've got Nebraska, but again, plenty to look for there. We have one more topic of the evening. Again, NBA season. We have not looked into it too much. As our viewers know, a lot of our viewers also watch Well Beyond the Arc. You know that I do an NBA show where that's literally all we talk about. But we do want to talk more NBA on this show, because we do want to kind of cover some of the current events going on. But we are only going to cover one topic, but arguably it is one of the most heavily covered basketball/sports topics of this year. And that is LeBron James is dawning to pass Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for being the all-time scorer. That has been a record that has been around since Kareem retired, which has been years. It has been looked at as potentially the unbeaten record, but LeBron is donning that. So I want to ask you a couple of things. One, what does this mean for the Lakers? I'm a Lakers guy. I can't even lie. I mean, I'm all decked out. I got the hat, the jersey, the tattoo. I can't hide it right now. I'm not trying to hide it at all. I'm a Lakers guy. They've not had as much success as I would have hoped, but they are starting to pick it up. But what does LeBron passing Kareem mean for the Lakers? Not even just this season, but as an organization. Does it even mean anything? And what does this mean in that GOAT conversation? Because if anyone knows anything about LeBron, it's that he is heavily debated to being the GOAT. What does this mean to both of those in regards?
As far as the team goes, I think it's pretty big. Obviously the Lakers haven't seen anybody of this caliber in a while. Probably, I guess the last person you could say was probably Kobe Bryant. May he rest in peace. But as far as all-time scorer, it's huge. Like, if he passes Kareem, LeBron James's number is going to go up in the rafters in that arena. There is no doubt about it. In my opinion, though, as far as the GOAT conversation, I still don't think he is the GOAT. He's put up all these really good numbers. Obviously, he's going to get the all-time scoring record. That's inevitable at this point. But in my opinion, to be the GOAT, you have to have rings to go along with that stat. And he does not have that many rings. He's made it to a lot of finals, but he's lost a bunch of finals too. I think he's got three rings, 4 rings maybe.
Or yeah,
He's got 4 rings. So he's close, I guess, to that GOAT conversation, but I don't know if he's quite there. I still think Michael Jordan's the greatest of all time to play. What are your thoughts?
and that's an absolutely fair assumption. If you watch Well Beyond the Arc, I don't remember exactly when we did this, but me and my co-host Manoli did an episode where we did a GOAT conversation. It wasn't really a debate. It was more of a conversation. We did that back, I think it was July or August. So go check that out. Well Beyond the Arc. We talk about the GOAT. In that episode, though, I talk about how I think that it's not LeBron, but it's also not Michael Jordan. My pick for the GOAT is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, because MVP, there's no one that is ever going to get as many MVPs as him. There's no one that's going to get as many championships to match up with those MVPs. And then you also look at what he did scoring wise. If LeBron takes the scoring record away, yeah, I mean, that's something that he's taking away, and that's something that is like changed. But Kareem still has 6 championships and 6 MVPs. LeBron is not going to finish with both of those. I don't think there's any way that LeBron James is going to ever go down as the GOAT. Now, top 5 player of all time, it's inevitable. He's already reached that, in my opinion. At least top 10 of all time. When he retires, will he be top 5? Absolutely. Will he be one? If he can win 6 championships and one more MVP, then maybe I can look at that. But until he does that, even the scoring doesn't like, it doesn't overtake championships, like you said. Championships matter, winning matters, personal stats matter. But if you are really the greatest, you were great for yourself, but you were also great for your organization and for your team. And we have not always seen that with LeBron James. So I don't think it makes him the GOAT. Now, for the Lakers, does it mean something special? Of course it does, because it means the last 2 players that hold your champion, that record, are Lakers. That's huge.
Mhm.
They're both championship winners. LeBron won a championship for the Lakers. Will he win another one? I don't honestly know at this point. But he won a championship for you. Kareem won plenty of them. He won 5 for you. So you have 2 guys that are both Lakers. They're both champions, and they're both legends of the game. So it's big for the Lakers because it means you're continuing that tradition of winning and being great. But it's not super big because I really want to see championships. And I know that I'm joined by many Lakers fans. We don't want to see LeBron get the scoring, record. We want to see LeBron help us win another title. So for me, it's great, but it doesn't make up for that lack of success. But it means a lot. And we will go for it. Going forward, again, like I've alluded to, we'll talk more NBA. So yeah, going forward, I mean, that's our only NBA topic for the evening, but it is a very big, heavily talked about topic, and be ready to see more NBA topics in the coming future.
For sure. We really appreciate you all for listening. Again, we hope you had a wonderful holidays, and we're looking forward to covering. Obviously, the playoffs are here. My Packers are looking like they're going to choke this one away here in the final 2 minutes, which is not great. But in all honesty, they don't deserve to be in. So, when the playoffs are solidified, we will talk more about it this next week. Obviously, next weekend is the start of wild card weekend. We'll have our thoughts. Obviously, we'll have our thoughts on the NCAA football national championship too on Monday. So thank you all for listening, and we will see you guys again this next week.